This is Dr.RED Panda.
Do you know how terrifying medieval medicine was? Do you know that medieval doctors were even scarier than assassins? Do you know how absurd medieval medical practices were? I'm Dr. Red Panda, and in this video we're going to focus on these questions. Misguided medieval medical practices. In the early Middle Ages, with the rise of Christianity, European medicine was plunged back into the era of witch doctors. The faithful believed that illness could be driven away with talismans, holy water, or, at worst, hymns and prayers. If you were sick and wanted to see a doctor, your only option was to visit the hospitals run by monasteries at the time. But as for how they would treat you, it was all very laissez-faire. Firstly, the lovely, gentle nuns would warmly welcome you, using all the facilities of the church to ensure you ate well, drank well, and slept soundly. Then, to keep your spirits up, they would occasionally take you on tours of the church, have you participate in prayer ceremonies, or observe sacred artifacts and activities. If you couldn't bear the torment of illness and asked why they wouldn't treat you, they would simply tell you, being sick means you have sinned. Only through sincere repentance and obtaining God's forgiveness can you be cured. When large hospitals refuse treatment, what can you do? Don't lose hope, as you can turn to private clinics for help. However, the atmosphere there is rather eerie, where patients might end up scared to death or exhausted before being cured. Why is that? In contrast to the clean image of modern hospitals, private clinics back then embraced a dark aesthetic. Doctors weren't seen as angels in white, but rather dressed in long black robes, wearing broad black hats, and during the Black Death outbreak, even sporting long beak-like masks, resembling grim reapers and quite terrifying. It's said that this attire could scare away any demons haunting the patients, and their essential staff, the cane, served both practical and symbolic purposes. It could lift the patient's clothing to avoid contact during examination, and in desperate times, it could be used to lash out at the patient to drive away the disease. In that era, everything was inevitably associated with the divine and supernatural. But even more bizarrely, have you heard of using astrology to diagnose illnesses? This is no joke. Medieval doctors believed that human health was linked to the stars, with different parts of the body influenced by different astrological signs. For example, Aries governed the head, Gemini affected the arms. Doctors would treat patients according to astrological charts. So, if you happen to injure your brain in March, sorry, it's not a good time for treatment under Aries. Wait until the sun moves out of Aries before seeking treatment. This chaotic approach to medicine persisted for many years, causing untold suffering, financial loss, and even death for countless patients. Finally, someone couldn't stand it anymore and stepped forward. None other than the Western revered father of medicine, Hippocrates. Disgusted by the prevailing medical fallacies of the time, he actively explored the characteristics of the human body and the causes of diseases, proposing the famous humoral theory. He believed that the complex human body was composed of 4 bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. These fluids, present in different proportions within the body, formed various temperaments in people. Choleric individuals with quick temperaments and rapid movements. Sanguine individuals with lively temperaments and agile movements. Phlegmatic individuals with calm temperaments and slow movements. And melancholic individuals with fragile temperaments and sluggish movements. The reason people fell ill, according to him, was due to an imbalance of these 4 bodily fluids. If one fluid became excessive, restoring health was simply a matter of expelling it. However, what Hippocrates never anticipated was that his humoral theory, intended to rectify imbalances, would become the theoretical foundation for the absurd practice of bloodletting in later centuries, leading to the widespread belief that bleeding could cure all ailments throughout the entire Middle Ages. The terrifying bloodletting therapy. This world is too crazy. Even mice are serving as bridesmaids to cats. This sentence perfectly encapsulates the chaos that ensued after the trend of bloodletting therapy. Patients begged to be bled, and barbers took up the role of surgeons. In theory, bloodletting, requiring specialized skills and a sterile environment, should have been performed by trained physicians, shouldn't it? However, the mindset of doctors during that era was completely unpredictable. Prior to the Middle Ages, the Ostrogothic kingdom, which ruled Italy, enforced a harsh law. Surgeons were mandated to achieve a 100% success rate in their operations. Failure or fatalities resulting from surgery meant the surgeon would be handed over to the patient's family for retribution. This stark contrast existed between internal and external medicine practitioners. Physicians were highly esteemed, even serving as personal doctors to popes and monarchs. In contrast, surgeons faced a lack of respect and were even denied teaching positions in universities. This pervasive notion that blood-stained hands were beneath one's dignity led to the peculiar practice of bloodletting being relegated to barbers. In medieval times, barbers were not just haircutters. They were also skilled surgeons who performed a variety of medical procedures. In addition to trimming hair and beards, they would remove moles, skin tumors, and even perform bloodletting, a common medical practice at the time. Bloodletting was believed to be a cure-all for a wide range of ailments, and many people would visit their barbers regularly to have their blood drained. This was thought to help prevent illness and maintain good health. As a result, barbers were in high demand, and their profession was considered to be quite lucrative. Although some barbers attained the title of surgeon through years of experience, the majority of them had low levels of education. Combined with the limited understanding of medieval pathophysiology, this occasionally led to dubious practices when faced with complex medical cases, resulting in the inadvertent deception of patients. For instance, in 12th century French literature, there's a tale of two young lovers who, unable to be together for a prolonged period, succumb to lovesickness and die. In a desperate attempt to alleviate his lovesickness before passing away, the young man undergoes a 6-hour bloodletting treatment by a barber surgeon. Similarly, the painting The Foolish Cure by Hieronymus Bosch depicts an absurd surgical procedure. At the time, it was commonly believed that low intelligence was caused by stones in the head. Consequently, some clergy members would collaborate with barber surgeons, donning a wisdom funnel, cutting open the patient's scalp, and then deceitfully showing them prepared stones, claiming they had been removed to profit from the deception. The sheer horror of exploiting and deceiving individuals for personal gain by opening another person's skull is chilling to contemplate. Of course, if one refused bloodletting therapy, doctors might recommend arsenic-induced vomiting or using pig bile enemas, all based on the notion that purging the dirty stuff would cure the ailment. The imagery can be described as rather macabre. The absurd enema therapy. Let's delve further into the topic of enemas. The concept of enemas originates from the deeply entrenched theory of autointoxication. According to this theory, feces are laden with toxins and harmful substances, and enemas can treat all ailments, correcting any abnormalities in the body. In this context, enemas were quite popular, and only the nobility could afford them. During the Middle Ages, the Arab regions were more advanced in medicine compared to Western Europe. Europeans, after learning from Arab medicine, gained knowledge of various herbs. However, Europeans took a different approach. Yes, just as you imagine, they used herbal concoctions for enemas. Initially, there weren't suitable enema instruments, so the nobles hired blowers. Yes, you read that correctly. Blowers were hired to use their mouths to administer the medicinal liquid into the depths of the dark recesses. By the 16th century in France, enemas became incredibly fashionable. According to records, King Louis XIII of France received 212 enemas from 1610 to 1643 and even developed numerous enema recipes. Louis XIV, in his lifetime, received over 2,000 enemas and particularly favored coffee enemas. Could it be that his rectum had taste buds? In addition to the conventional therapies mentioned above, several unconventional methods emerged later on, such as amputation therapy, fecal application therapy, and pain substitution therapy. For instance, in amputation therapy, if one suffers from hand pain, they might resort to amputating the hand, or if it's foot pain, amputation of the foot might be considered. However, when it comes to head pain, obviously decapitation isn't an option. Instead, Physicians would recommend driving nails soaked in holy water into the skull to expel the supposed demons causing the pain. Yet, it wouldn't be entirely accurate to assert that medieval medicine was entirely futile. Take, for example, the surgical treatment of hemorrhoids, which was quite successful for its time. Surgeons swiftly excised the hemorrhoids with a knife and then cauterized the wound with a heated iron to sterilize and stop bleeding. Despite the excruciating process, this was one of the most successful and scientifically grounded procedures of the medieval era. Even today, in hemorrhoid surgery, the logic of high-frequency electric knives for cauterization remains unchanged. Apart from hemorrhoid surgery, medieval surgeons also devised other viable methods. Trepanning, for instance, involved drilling holes into the skull of an injured individual to extract shattered bone fragments. Additionally, techniques like cauterization for stab wounds could address wound infections to some extent. However, these surgeries were invariably excruciating. Anesthesia wasn't available during that period. Instead, surgeons relied on concoctions of drugs to induce toxic comas in patients. Yet, this method's efficacy in anesthesia was highly unreliable, often resulting in patients waking up midway through surgery or failing to regain consciousness post-operation. A glimmer of dawn in the Dark Ages. The medieval medicine, despite its ignorance and backwardness, was not entirely devoid of merit. Even in the darkest of times, a glimmer of light illuminated the clouds of theological domination. In the mid-9th century, the school of Salerno was established in Italy. While the founder of the school of Salerno remains uncertain, it rapidly flourished in the 11th century, laying the groundwork for the medical revolution that would follow the Renaissance. The school of Salerno abandoned the shackles of religious medicine, advocated for the inclusion of female physicians in the field, established anatomy-based medical research, and most importantly, introduced a 5-year medical education system which persists to this day. The medieval period, spanning 1,000 years of darkness, was characterized by profound ignorance and obscurity that are difficult for us to comprehend. Even within the realm of medicine, the examples mentioned in the text merely scratch the surface of medieval history's iceberg of darkness. However, what we cannot deny is that even in the darkest of moments, there were individuals striving for that elusive dawn. And that's a wrap for this episode of the video. I'm DR.RED Panda. If any of you have your own perspectives, or if you think there are any errors in the video, feel free to leave a comment in the discussion section. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Until next time, take care.